I am concerned. You may have a good idea. I don't want to conflate your ideas with the Islamic Allah's ideas. And that is where any response that I get from you on behalf of Islam, I want not your response per se, not your ultimate response, but the Islamic response. You are not giving an answer to the question I've asked, so I've repeated the question one last time. Do you have any evidence? I have given one evidence to suggest Surah 2, Ayat 114, that Masjid al-Haram did not belong to the Muslims pre-Islam. As Islam began, Masjid al-Haram did not belong to the Muslims. I have given evidence even from your Quran. Whoa, 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 whoa. Whoa, 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 whoa. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Whoa. So please help me understand. We had a polite, nice conversation the last time we met, and you have been a marvelous person. I remember we had a conversation there. So I'm going to ask you this. Because you're polite, and I'm assuming you'd like to have peace. Would you like to have peace with non-Muslims?
That's what God wants.
So that's what the Islamic Allah wants in your mind. Please help me understand where. Please help me understand. According to the Quran, where in the Quran do you have a peaceful takeover of the world?
Tell your community to come down.
So it's not about Islam, it's about Allah. So Allah wants His children to come back to Him and His ways. So Allah moves in different ways. One way can be your heart. One way can be through His revelation. And one way can be through society. So for example, He might change the heart of a church leader and his congregation can come back to Islam.
But listen to me carefully. Here is where I want to stay focused. And how I'd like to stay focused is this. I am concerned. You may have a good idea. I don't want to conflate your ideas with the Islamic Allah's ideas. And that is where any response that I get from you on behalf of Islam, I want not your response per se, not your ultimate response, but the Islamic response. So please, you need to quote from the Quran. What is the question I'm asking you? The question I'm asking you is this. Clearly the Quran is interested in a worldwide takeover. That's clear. It's there in multiple places, Surah 8, Surah 9, Surah 2, in different places. I can show you particular verses for that. Religion is all for Allah. All religion should become Islam across the world. That's a target. 5 different places revealed in the Quran. So worldwide takeover for Islam is there in the Quran. And what does it mean for the air land to be taken over by Islam? Where Sharia, Islamic Sharia, becomes the law of the land. That's the ultimate definition. So that's also clear in the Quran. I am now focused on the methodology, the details of what would happen in the process. So you are saying that as Islam accomplishes this worldwide takeover, it would want to do this in peace with the non-Muslims. I want to know details from the Quran where you find that the Islamic Allah is interested in a worldwide takeover through peace. Where do you find that in the Quran?
Everywhere.
Show me a few places, please.
So unfortunately I'm not knowledgeable enough to give you any verses.
But you said everywhere.
Everywhere.
But you can't quote even one.
I can't quote even one.
This is a bit of a, I don't know if...
That's my weakness, not the Quran.
I'll tell you, I'll give you some details. So Islam had religious conflict. Of course, Islam began in the 7th century. There are details of how Muslims began to live recorded in the Quran. Islam had conflict with at least 3 different groups at the early times as recorded in the Quran. The Jews and the Christians, general non-Muslims, and particularly custodians of Masjid al-Haram. At least 3 different groups. You find details. All 3 situations, disagreements, resolved through violence. Do you know of any of these particular conflicts resolved in a peaceful manner?
In Islam, violence is allowed for self-defense, especially for when a religious community is very small. For example, when in Moses' time, there was the...
Don't go to Moses. Moses is not Islam. Moses is a very different ball game. I am concerned about Islam, 7th century. Did the Muslims resolve any religious disagreement they had criminally, as a matter of fact, their religious disagreements were criminal. They wanted to take over properties of other religions. So that was a criminal intent. So even when they disagreed criminally, did they use peaceful means to resolve any of these problems?
So violence and war is allowed in Islam for self-defense.
But did they ever use peace?
Yeah, to begin with, everything.
Where did they use peace? In the Quran. Where did they use peace? Towards who?
In the Quran, Prophet Muhammad was preaching to his people for 14 years.
Where did he use peace? 3 separate groups of people with whom the early Muslims, as recorded in the Quran, ran into religious disagreement criminally. In all these disagreements, the Muslims were criminals because they wanted to take over properties of other people, which is criminal. So all 3 religious disagreements were criminal on the Muslim side. Which of these issues did they resolve peacefully?
Are you familiar with the Battle of Badr?
I am focused on details here. If you want to bring out some details from here, I'm into which particular people group are you talking about?
So in the Quran, there'll be a Battle of Badr.
There's no Battle of Badr in the Quran. That's from your outside of the
There's no
Quran.
Battle of Badr in the Quran. I'll let the viewers decide.
Please listen carefully. The word Battle of Badr, the phrase Battle of Badr doesn't show up in the Quran. Or actually, wait a second. Maybe. So which particular detail would you like to bring out from the Quran, please?
So the question I'm asking,
Yeah.
in the Battle of Badr, did the Muslims attack or did the pagans? Or did the pagans attack the Muslims? Was it a self-defense battle or was it aggression battle? Was it
In
a
relation to
criminal battle?
custodians of Masjid al-Haram, I can tell you who the initial aggressors were. Custodians of Masjid al-Haram owned a property. Muslims wanted to take that over. So, the initial aggression was by the Muslims. In relation to the Jews and the Christians, I can tell you again. Jews and Christians, set themselves up in a defensive stance. Surah Al-Hashr, Surah 59, clarifies this. Nowhere is there any evidence that the Muslims were nowhere is there any evidence that the non-Muslims were the initial aggressors. Everywhere, in every situation, the Quran clearly clarifies that the Muslims were the initial aggressors in every situation. So none of these battles, none of these situations, the Muslims were acting in self-defense. None of these.
So yeah, just please check your facts.
I have checked my facts.
So Badr was in self-defense and Uhud was in self-defense.
I have
and all of the initial battles were in self-defense.
You need to know.
Please check.
Where in the Quran, which people group, where in the Quran, I'd like to get to the details.
I'm not a scholar on the Quran. I can't give you verses, but I know from the hadith and
But
the history.
are you hearing at least what I am giving? Hadiths
You're saying
later.
Muslim are aggressive. You're saying the Muslim aggressors for Uhud and Badr. Is that your stance?
No, I'm saying altogether the summary of Muslims engaging with non-Muslims in the Quran, if I could summarize, 3 different people groups with whom Muslims had religious disagreement. In all 3 cases, the Muslims were criminal because they were the initial aggressors. One broad category, custodians of Masjid al-Haram. With Masjid al-Haram, Surah 2, Ayah 114 clearly says that was not an Islamic property. That was a non-Islamic property. Surah 2, Ayat 114. The non-Muslims said, no Islamic Allah business here. Don't do Islamic Allah here. If you are deluded, keep your delusion to yourself. Don't bring this here. This is our place. Don't come in. Surah 2, Ayat 114 testifies. Yet, Surah Al-Anfal testifies. Surah At-Tawbah testifies. Surah in a few other places clearly testifies that the Muslims went ahead with violence and took over. So who were the criminals? The Muslims. When a property that didn't belong to them, they were going to take over, who are the criminals?
Was there any violence?
Please listen. If I come to your house,
It's peaceful.
listen carefully. If I come to your house, peacefully shoo you away, and never let you back into your house peacefully. Maybe I come here, at the door, give you a pizza, take you away, and never let you back into your house, is that crime or not?
It depends whose house it is.
So this is not your house. So this is where your house. I knock your door. You come. I say, hey, look, we know each other. Please come. Have this tea with you. And you unwittingly step aside. And I quickly push you, and maybe not even touch you. Quickly go into your house. Close the door behind you. Never let you back in. Am I a criminal or not?
It's actually not my house. It's Prophet Abraham's house.
Here is where. No.
The Kaaba is Prophet Abraham's house.
But listen to me carefully. In the example I have given, can we agree that I am a criminal? Can we agree? In the example I have given.
In your example,
Sure.
it's not my house.
No. I am talking about your house in the 21st century. If I make you leave your house and never let you back in, do we agree that I am a criminal? Do we agree?
It depends. If I'm squatting in that house, who am I?
Listen carefully.
Am I the owner or the
You're
squatter?
now being very, very not sincere, insincere, very insincere. You now need to focus. The question I'm asking is very simple. Your house, what you own, land registry you own, you paid the money, the deposit, you are paying the mortgage. I come in, I knock on the door. As you open the door, I show you a pizza. I say, hey, look, let's have pizza. You step outside. I walk in, close the door behind you, never let you back in. Am I a criminal or not?
Yes.
Thanks. Very good. More so if I also beat you up in the process. More so. If I also, without showing a pizza, if I drag you hard, beat you with a club, and stamp you and throw you onto the street, I am even more criminal, yeah?
Yes.
Multiple crimes. And my challenge to you is, that's exactly what the Muslims did. That's exactly what the Muslims did with Masjid al-Haram. That's exactly what they did. Surah 2, Ayat 114 testifies that Masjid al-Haram was owned by non-Muslims who clearly said, no Islamic Allah here. Surah 2, Ayat 114.
I understand.
So it was non-Islamic. We both understand. When it is non-Islamic and Muslims wanted to take over and they use violence as recorded in Surah Al-Anfal, Surah 8, as recorded in Surah Al-Maidah, Surah 5, as recorded in Surah At-Tawbah, Surah 9, including Surah 9, 5 and so on, can we agree the Muslims were criminals?
No, because the question is who built the Kaaba? Whose was it? Who built
Do you
the
have,
Kaaba?
I'll ask one last time this question. Do you have any evidence to suggest that Masjid al-Haram pre-7th century was non-Islamic?
Do you have anything to the
Sorry,
contrary?
Islamic.
Islamic, yeah.
Islamic.
Do you have any evidence to the contrary? We have the Quran. What do you have?
Listen carefully. I have said the Quran itself testifies for me, not for you. The Quran itself testifies that Masjid al-Haram was non-Islamic, pre-Islam. The Quran itself testifies. I can read this for you if you like. Surah 2, Ayat 114. Surah 2, deals with Masjid al-Haram, don't you? Are you familiar with this?
No, I'm not familiar.
Here is why, when you're not familiar, please don't make things up. If you read Surah 2, in towards the end, Ayat 216, 217, 216, it talks about sacred month, Masjid al-Haram. Do you see that?
Yeah, can you please read?
Yeah, so that's talking about Masjid al-Haram. It begins explaining the context of Hajj to Masjid al-Haram and whatever else. So the same surah which deals with Hajj to Masjid al-Haram in Ayat 214 clearly says this. 214. Or do you think that you will enter paradise while such has not come? Surah 2. One second. One second, I need to.
No, take your time.
114, not 214. Did I say 2? Yeah, 114, sorry. 114. Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayat 114. And who are more unjust than those who prevent the name of Allah being mentioned in his mosques and jihad towards their destruction? So the surah, whilst discussing the dynamics of what the Muslims ran into with the custodians of Masjid al-Haram, clearly says that the custodians prevented the name of Allah being mentioned in places including Masjid al-Haram. You see, where Allah can't be mentioned, it is not Islamic. Where the people said, no Allah, we don't do Allah here, like how the Christians say about churches, we don't do Allah here. Even though you think it's the same Allah, we say, no, we don't do your Allah here. We deal with a different God. The same, no, we don't have Allah. You say the same delusion, the same mental ailment showed up to Muslims from the 7th century. The non-Muslims, custodians of Masjid al-Haram, very clearly said, no Allah here, no. So 114, who are more unjust than those who prevent the name of Allah being mentioned? They clearly said, no Allah here in his mosques, no Allah here. So the Quran itself testifies that Masjid al-Haram, according to records from the 7th century, as Islam was starting up, the Quran itself testifies no Allah in Masjid al-Haram. In other words, non-Islamic. You ask me for evidence for Masjid al-Haram being non-Islamic from pre-Islamic times, that's it. Your Quran itself sides with me, not with you. Do you now have, contradicting Surah 2, Ayat 114, from pre-Islam, any evidence to suggest that the Masjid al-Haram was Islamic? Until you gave me that, you should be considered, like the 7th century Muslims, as a deluded Muslim who was violent and criminal, because you decided in your delusion that building belonged to you.
So where the Quran says, is there anyone more unjust? In our example where you gave the pizza and the house, you can still say, is there anyone more unjust that sits in someone else's house when it isn't their house? So we believe that the Kaaba is the house of
You believe,
Allah.
completely understand. What I'm saying, when you don't have evidence and you believe, it's what we call delusion. Especially when it involves criminal aspects, it's a delusion which deserves for people with the delusion to be sectioned. In the 7th century, the Muslims had delusion enough that they should have all been sectioned, including Muhammad. So that is where I'm asking you. You are not giving an answer to the question I've asked, so I've repeated the question one last time. Do you have any evidence? I have given one evidence to suggest Surah 2, Ayat 114, that Masjid al-Haram did not belong to the Muslims pre-Islam. As Islam began, Masjid al-Haram did not belong to the Muslims. I have given evidence even from your Quran. Do you have any evidence to the contrary to suggest that you're not deluding, but that you are firmly rooted in history? And if you are, give me evidence for why you think Masjid al-Haram was an Islamic property from pre-7th century.
If I can show you that Prophet Abraham in the Quran built the Kaaba, would that satisfy you?
The Quran has a delusion, I completely understand. But the Quran, despite having a delusion, testifies that Masjid al-Haram was non-Islamic in the 7th century. So the Quran both reveals a delusion and the historical truth. I am asking you to counter the delusion. Have you got evidence pre-7th century to suggest, pre-Islam, to suggest by Quran itself, Surah 2, 114, Masjid al-Haram non-Islamic. Pre-Islam, do you have any evidence to suggest Masjid al-Haram was Islamic?
Please tell me one thing first. Do you acknowledge the Quran as a source of truth?
In other words, no evidence pre-Islam.
Because you're
In other words, my dear friend, I have quoted your own Quran to debunk your ideas and to suggest to you, not just you, people in the 7th century like you, but you are not in the 7th century. They were deluded. They clearly didn't want to. One second, please, let me finish. They clearly both testified that the building didn't belong to them, yet Yet used violence. Surah 9, Ayat 5. Violence. Surah 9. You can read the first 40 ayats. Whoa, 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 whoa. Whoa, 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 whoa. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Whoa, whoa. Whoa, 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 whoa.
Camera as well.
Whoa, 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 whoa.
It's bleeding. I think we're done.
Unbelievable, unbelievable. Should we call who's calling ambulance? Someone call ambulance. Ambulance, ambulance. Hey, hey.